We'll call this meeting to order. The purpose of our being here today is we're going to talk to Mark and John from the train company about the replacement of or planned replacement of the air handling system at the county jail. And this is a project that is way overdue, and we have been written up numerous times, right, Joey, by the state jail inspector on this. And this is another one of our projects that we plan to use ARPA funds for. So, Mark, you're the lead man on this. Why don't you take it from there and lead us through this?
Thank you, Commissioner Strong. I appreciate that, and thank you for the meeting. So we appreciate it. So, Train is a major manufacturer of air handling, chiller equipment, you know, that type of the types of systems that we're talking about that go into jail. And so we understand environmental control. We make the stuff, we apply it. We have engineering, installation, service talent. So we understand that whole chain of events in terms of what it takes to provide an appropriate environment in space. And I don't think I need to tell anyone that jails are a unique environment. I always said it's a hotel that's full, and there's always a high demand. The buildings are under stress, and just because of their operation. And so we want to make sure that the solution going forward is a robust design, that it has a long lifespan, that it meets all of your criteria. And because ARPA funds are involved, there's some rules attached to that we just want to make sure are adhered to. And I think, in a sense, that's part and parcel with what we wanted to talk about today. So what we would like to do is basically to be selected under what I would call a professional services approach, where we can come in and assume full responsibility for the installation. We can supply the equipment, and in a sense, the equipment can be, as opposed to going through contractors, we can sell it to you directly, if that makes sense. So we're not putting contractor markups on it, or it's not going through a chain of contractors, if you will, so that the equipment can be direct. But then we would, all of the installation labor, all of the services about the scope in terms of installation and all of those ancillary services, we would actually bid out on your behalf. So we can advertise that in a general sense, or we can do it by invitation. Many times when you're dealing with projects like this, again, you want to make sure that we're attracting the contractors that understand that the nature of this work can provide quality service. So we tend to vet them for their safety requirements, their financial strength, and in this case, because we're talking about federal dollars that are flowing down through the Treasury because of ARPA funding, there's some rules attached about Davis-Bacon prevailing wage, which isn't really a factor in Indiana apart from the use of federal funds. So we would vet all of that out as well. And so what we do then is I would have had our engineer here today, but he has a cold and I don't want to get anyone exposed to it. But he's a professional engineer. He's on our staff. What he would do is he would help in terms of the design. He would do contractor walkthroughs. We would write up, if you will, the installation specifications, all of the work associated with what this would take, and then we're willing to assume full responsibility for the result. Okay, so when we're dealing with sheriffs, I call it one throat to choke, you know, so we assume full responsibility for the end result. So because of ARPA funds, we want to make sure that air quality standards, indoor air quality, the language around that, or the guidance around that, says that we need to take these kinds of things into consideration. So in our discussions with Commissioner Strong, and I think that the idea would be to look at some different technologies that we might apply in terms of the air handling units. It could be UV, it could be any, we we have a variety of technologies. We haven't settled or would make a recommendation, but as we go in from this post-COVID world, one of the things that they want to make sure is that the air quality, the health and safety of the inmates in the jails are maintained to a very high standard. So we understand that, and that we would include those elements in terms of our overall scope. And so what I've done is, and I don't have a copy for everyone, but I've got a couple that basically just kind of describes the flow down of how this works. And I'll just, if I can
Mark,
do
I
that.
can go make some copies. Are they both the same?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll go back.
essentially the same.
Scott sent me an invitation today
Yeah,
for 2:30 to 4:30.
that would be, it's in my calendar too. There's,
We apologize.
Well, DLZ sent a reminder today, this morning, from 2:30 to 4:30 to be here.
yeah, that's what I came in, I said, is this meeting at 2 or 2:30? Because I got two different things, so.
Well, we better hurry.
So is
We
it
got
okay?
21 minutes.
No.
Yeah, they looked like they were coming.
Thanks. He's got both of them. I don't have a contact for John.
Would it be Eric Ratz by
They're
chance?
always John's.
It was Scott
Oh, okay.
that sent the,
Oh, Scott's wanting in. He said to push this a minute. There, he did it. Press escape or double click.
Well, you got it out of the way for the year, so
there you go.
it's 1 year.
Y'all just had it knocked off from 2:30 to 4:30.
No idea about it over there. He's
And then we're hurrying up.
I'm not sure we can do, we don't know how to,
If the ceiling
we don't even know how to let someone in who's trying to, he left a little control on his own.
To see what they have to do before they were.
Check the date on that.
It was,
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's the way I kind of like to treat it, the master document, it offers guidance. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner.
Here, I'll give you one back.
That way at least I can
Okay.
reference one. So there's two different flavors of this. Again, one where the bottom one is kind of what I was talking about. So it's a single contract if you, with us, professional services, again, and then all of the subs are under our control, okay? And we'll vet them. Again, we supply the scopes, we do the walkthroughs, we guide this whole process for a good result. And again, so we've got a bid element to it. That's all transparent. There's no surprises there. The one at the top is the same kind of concept, except you have the option where there would be more than one contract. There'd be a contract potentially with Train, and you could have a separate contract with the subcontractors if you elected to do it that way. So there's flexibility. Personally, I like to do the bottom one because we're responsible for everything. And then the other thing that we look at is because we're an equipment provider, and a service provider, we can do such things as providing extended warranties and other things that go beyond what typical contractors would be able to do. So what that means then basically is that you give quality installation, and then basically you're assured that there's no, that the operation and maintenance is maintained, or the warranty is an extended warranty. So it tends to be pretty attractive, and again, because we're the manufacturer, because we understood how that went in, we're assured that it's a good quality installation, if that makes sense. So that's really, that's the summary. I put together a draft of just what we call a letter of commitment that provides a little more definition around this, but essentially it's saying that we would be proceeding with a professional services agreement. We'll do the architectural engineering design. We'll make sure all the specifications, the state submission, approval, local permitting, prints, competitive process by invitation, the scope. And again, we know that we're talking air handling equipment, but I also, I make the caveat that there could be other infrastructure improvements identified by county leadership. There might be some things that we find beyond this that might be important or could be incorporated. So I'd like to just make that little blanket statement that we can do that. And so the language that I use is that we're going to improve the air quality, we're going to have reliability, efficiency of the HVAC operations, improved ability to monitor and control the indoor air quality in the occupied spaces, improved comfort and health for safety for the staff and public, address age and worn environmental systems, and then compliance with the ARPA guidance. And so that's basically it. So the only other element is if, and again, so we do this, we bring this forward, you have the opportunity to review it. I like to conduct workshops as we do this. I want the sheriff and the staff to know, and the commissioners and council to know what they're getting, and to have, so there's some checks and balances that you end up knowing exactly what it is that we're doing. If for some reason we get to a point that would say, okay, great, we've done all this work, and for whatever reason you decide not to go forward with us, I have a small breakaway fee in here that just to compensate me for my engineering, some of my engineering expense. It's not a big number, but it's just something that, yeah, it never really happens, but it's just one of those things that I like to address up front so there's no surprises.
Do you give a list of your employees to the sheriff before they come here so he can approve them?
Absolutely, yeah. Do background checks and all that, and that's not a problem.
Tracy, you got anything?
Well, I just was thinking of the process and the time frame on it.
Yeah, it's a good, and the other thing that this does, now we're all dealing with this protracted equipment, the ability, what I call the supply chain issues or whatever. This allows us to really help with that. That's so a lot of our customers that we're working with, when we identify and select equipment, we can do that earlier in the process, so it helps to mitigate, installation times. In this, what I said, and I put 10 weeks to do all the evaluation and come back with, if you will, a final proposal, and that gives my engineers time to get all this framed up, to do all the equipment selection. Please feel free to jump in here, Joshua. And then we have to do the contractor walkthrough, so there's just some time that it takes to do all of this, and so I don't want to rush anything. But if there's some sensitivity that says 10 weeks is too long, we need to make it 8 or whatever, let me know. I mean, we can work through that. But that's the concept. Trey Mixed, great products, we're known. And so we do a lot of work in local government, we do work in education, higher education. We have 3 major offices in the state of Indiana. We have trucks on the road. So we're a very robust, supplier. Okay, there's no concern. We're over a 100-year-old company. Very and very much ethically driven because of our footprint. So we do a lot of business in the state.
Hey, John, or Mark, you guys have been over there and you've looked over the equipment, right? So you pretty much know what needs to be done, right?
Yes. Yeah.
High level, yeah.
Yeah, high level. There's a lot of detailed work, but yes, we understand the scope and the concept. Absolutely.
Okay. So where in this process are you able to give us an actual bid amount on this work?
Yes. So once we get the contractors walk through, then we'll have their numbers and we can roll that up with the equipment. And so, I put 10 weeks in this is when we would come back with, or sometime, it could be sooner, but that's about what I would be talking about.
Okay. Okay, here's my problem with this process that you're talking about. What we're getting from you is not an apples to apples comparison. We already have one proposal with a dollar amount on it from another company
Okay.
to do this work.
Okay.
And simply put, that's what we need more than anything else. A proposal with, and this is how much it's going to cost you. This is our bid. Your approach to this is quite a bit more involved than, I'm not saying you're wrong, but
Right.
It's quite a bit more involved than what the path we've started down with other people. I don't know quite right now where to go with this. Joey, do you want to add anything to this? Or?
No, I mean, this is something we've been battling for a while. I know we had Barnheiser come down from Richmond and they cleaned the ducts, which was the first time that had been done. We were hopeful that would help in some way, but the last jail inspection, there was no air movement over there. So, from our end of that, besides just the human part of it, you don't want these people back there with restricted airflow, but it causes them it gets hotter and there's air not flowing through there and they get more heated and they're more aggressive with the jailers and it makes when they're cold, it's just it's a whole trickle down effect. So quicker the better. To me, I know that's not something that can just get done, but I'm glad we're moving forward with something because it's been, like you said earlier, we've been dinged on it pretty much every jail inspection that I can remember. So it's something that got to get something done. But they'll have full access to come in and if they need to bring their contractors in to look at whatever, we'll bring them in and show them what they need to and maybe get a bid from them and figure it out.
Yeah. Well, Mark, the competitive bidding process is the way we started out on this, and that's when you asked to come in on it.
Right.
That's I don't know if we made it clear that was the path we had already started down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still comfortable that we would be soliciting bids in terms of the labor and that component. My answer to your question is, to me, this is more than just a simple replacement of HVAC equipment. Okay, it's because of the airflow issues, because of the indoor air quality aspect, and because of the ARPA fund use. I think that we're approaching it more from an engineering standpoint, that we want to go through and do the engineering to make sure that whatever is designed and whatever we recommend meets airflow, indoor air quality improvements, that it meets all of those standards. And there's some guidance in the ARPA funding use that says that that's the kinds of things that they're looking for. And so I'm not challenging the thought. You know, you're free to do exactly what you want, but based on what we've seen so far, we see some real need to figure some things out before I would just arbitrarily give you a quote for equipment replacement, if that makes sense. The other thing that I see is you've got a lot of older pneumatic controls that really should be upgraded. They're old, they're inefficient, they're hard to work on, they're hard to find people. So when I looked at like the damper actuators and the control system, which is essentially the brains of the mechanical system, that's a much older vintage. And so if we're going to attack the issues that we're talking about, airflow, proper quality, that needs to be addressed in this as well. So that's really why I'm recommending this approach. There is a competitive element to it. I mean, we would be soliciting on your behalf. We would be soliciting, you know, competitive requirements, labor, electrical controls, all of that.
I guess it's easy for me to forget that since that system over there is over 30 years old, technology has changed quite a bit. Requirements and standards have changed quite a bit. Whatever we do, I want it to be a system that we can get another 30 years out of, you know, and be compliant. I don't want a future sheriff sitting in Joey's seat being in trouble over something that we didn't do right the first time.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that you set the table that way, that said, look, we've got airflow issues and this type of thing. I'll give you an example. We did some work up in Jasper County, up in Rensselaer, the jail. And we had already done a project at their community corrections. They liked what we did. We solved a lot of problems. They had spent a whole bunch of money based on the original design. The building was constructed on the cheap. They had a lot of issues related to just building envelope stuff or whatever. And they had a whole bunch of people that came in and made all these recommendations and sold them a whole bunch of stuff and extra systems that ended up fighting each other. And so by the time it got to us, what we said was, we're not going to recommend anything until we study what it is that you got. So we're coming in with a fact-based solution to your problems. And in that case, we spent almost a year just doing the review, the analysis. We did infrared scans of the building. We went through a systematic approach before we came back and made recommendations. Here I'm asking for techniques, okay? But what the solution, in my opinion, is still, it's an engineered approach. I don't want to just sell you equipment and hope that it, you know, that it solves the problem. I've heard enough and I've seen enough in our review right now that there's some study that needs to be done, and I would bring in the appropriate expertise, and we would come back with a very cohesive plan in terms of how the approach would be. And you would be, and I'm not asking you, you're not committing to a contract at this point, but I am asking you to buy into a process to evaluate this. And I recognize it might be a little different than what you were maybe initially expecting.
Well, that's making more and more sense. But for sure, that's not the way we began.
Understand.
Now, you say you have a contract?
It's a letter, it basically is just a letter that kind of spells out the kinds of things that.
And I can give her the VO3.
Oh, you got one? Okay, perfect. Do that. And this is a draft, so don't, we can. But what it's saying basically is that I'm coming in, I'm assuming response, so when we say, we're gonna fix this, we're gonna fix it. And you're going to have unique insights in terms of what maybe those core issues are. Remember, we make and manufacture this stuff. We train the engineers, the engineering community buys and specs our stuff, and we hold educational seminars on the application of air handling equipment, chiller equipment, controls. So we're, how would I say this? We're coming at it with a lot of intellectual capital.
And you're sort of speaking more to the actual overhauling of everything and to really get to the,
It's really more of a holistic approach to building upgrades, because there's two ways to look at this. There's simply pulling out the air handlers and replacing them the way they are now. And that might fix some of your problems, but chances are it won't fix all of your problems, because the airflow issues are usually not because the air handlers don't work. So what we're doing is we're taking a step back and we're looking at the system as a whole, instead of just the individual components. And we're saying, how can we make all of this work together so that we can address all of these issues with one solution, instead of saying, okay, we're going to replace the air handlers, then next year we're going to go see if we can fix the ductwork, and then
Right.
we'll do the controls the next year.
you're
So you-
speaking of surgery right now instead of stitches, right? I
Correct.
mean, I see exactly what you're saying here.
Well, and we do work in, education, higher education. We do work in hospitals. We know what it takes to make sure that an operating room has the appropriate environment. So, and, jails are they're a special animal, okay? And, so,
Air handling for the jail. This is-
No, that was a mistake, Jane. Forget that. I'll explain later.
We failed to let you know. Yeah, that's right, we're sorry. We failed to let her know that, to change that.
and I think the sheriff, and I don't want to, he said it very well. What we know is that when you don't have the right environmental conditions in jail, it causes stress among the inmates. And when you have stress among the inmates, now you increase the danger for the staff, okay? Because these people are acutely aware of what's going on. So temperature, humidity, the environment, they live with it on a minute-by-minute basis. And so we need to get to the core issues.
I would think our energy costs have been probably astronomical
Probably
too.
enormous.
It's the other thing that I like to look at, but in the interest of, and we can incorporate some elements there. To Joshua's point, we tend to look more holistically and then apply the right equipment rather than just sell you some pieces and parts and take the money and say, okay.
The energy savings are almost the inevitable part of
Right.
building improvements like that too.
Right.
So upgrading the controls and implementing things like schedules and getting setbacks and things like that, the energy savings are built in to that. Doesn't necessarily have to be forever, but they're there.
I would hate to see you spend good money, end up, okay, you got some new systems, but you still have some of the same old problems. That would not be a win.
That's losing, yeah, that's
So.
losing.
And Commissioner Strong has been very good in terms of framing this. He invited us in, and I recognize that this might be a bit of a departure. There's a whole bunch of people out there that will sell you stuff, and I'm not trying to denigrate that, but this is just the classic, there's some figured out stuff aspect to it. If I had my engineer here, he could be much more eloquent about some of the things that we would do or look at.
Okay, so if we have you go through this process and come up, do the engineering and come up with a final proposal, and then even if that would be the winning proposal, we would still have to pay, you would still expect us to pay you $7,500 for that.
Yeah, I will have spent a lot more than that.
Yeah, okay.
So if there's an, how would I say this? If I'm competing against someone that's just installing equipment versus an engineered approach, and if you're committed to that, I would just back out at this point. I don't mean that disrespectfully, it's just that I'm not competing in this, I'm not offering the same thing.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
right. Is there anyone else that you know of that even does what you're doing, like at the level that you're doing, that would be competitive, like, rather than just installing or giving a bid for equipment?
Most of this stuff it's gonna be local contractors, and we know that, and recognize they're our customers too, so I don't, I'm not speaking ill of them. I'm just saying that we know enough about this that it's the nature of what we do, so.
We have a unique position of being involved in almost every
Right.
portion of these types of projects in some form or other.
We sell to contractors, we work with the engineers, we work with general contract, we're in all of that.
Making and service the equipment.
Right, and we provide service and warranty support and everything on our project.
So referring back to this first paper that
Yeah.
you gave us, it would be that you could be the overseer basically as well.
Yeah,
and
I
then
call
you
it
get
like the program
bids.
manager, Commissioner Strong said, well, you're kind of like the general contractor. Yeah, that's a good
Right.
way of thinking about it. I'm responsible for all of these things. But it also includes the design and engineering aspect too.
Your final proposal would come back within the 10-week period.
And I understand, it sounds like there's some time sensitivity here, so if there's an opportunity to speed this up a bit, I'm sensitive to what I'm hearing here. So,
Yeah, 'cause I'm not sure that it's probably not properly working, just like Joey shared.
yeah.
Well, after hearing all this, I realize more we kind of are at risk of replacing an old inadequate system with a new inadequate system, in one sense. We wouldn't want to repeat the mistakes that was made 30-some years ago. This is certainly a different approach than the way we started this, isn't it, Dale?
In Jasper County, I had the privilege of going in and telling the commissioners, recognize they had dealt with, they had several companies that all said they were going to fix something, and they got disappointed. And then I basically said you had just spent $250,000 on what they thought were improvements that just ended up bungling it up even more. That was a difficult conversation, but we had spent the time and the energy to educate them, and we solved those long-standing issues, which are the same kinds of things I'm hearing here: comfort, air distribution, air quality, controls. With them, it impacted the entire jail. Well, this does too, for the most part, really. So,
And just so you guys are aware, our numbers are way up again right now. We're 165 to 170 consistently over the past few weeks, so more people.
it's a big jail.
Makes it worse.
You've got, it's a very intense environment.
Yeah, so we're 60 over, 55,
Yeah.
60 over right now.
At that number, you're probably undersized on your HVAC system, even if it was brand new. So,
So do you put the system in that's for what his jail says he's supposed to have, or for the person, the allotted people that he has, if I'm saying that right?
We'll evaluate what's there, and we might recommend, some other strategies or department. Fundamentally, there's gonna be air delivery systems, okay? So in that sense, we know that we need to bring in, fresh air, we need to condition it, we need to make sure that it's distributed appropriately, and that it's controlled, okay? So you got a lot of old controls there too, and so think of that, that's the brains of the mechanical system. So as conditions change, or as we're talking about indoor air quality, we want to monitor CO2, we want to monitor conditions so the bar's been raised, if you will, post, we all went through COVID. I don't know what your statistics here were in this jail, but we know going forward, indoor air quality, and the ARPA guidance spells this out. So that's the other thing, is that we look in the language that we're going to use is going to support the use of the funding. So that's the other thing, it's, we're going to want to know that it was applied appropriately. That makes sense.
Hypothetically, this may sound ignorant because I may not understand how the process is. So I think you guys said 10 weeks to, if they approve it, to get all your final figures together and what would need to be done. Is something that could be completed this year if everything falls, or is that?
the biggest issue we're facing is control lead times.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
every company's having shortages of microchips. We're no
That's-
exception.
Yeah.
So, that is the key factor in how quickly this will be able to get.
We just talked to Mr. Reed, and I talked to him yesterday. I was actually going to come see you guys yesterday, and I said, hey, what's trucks looking like? He said, I don't even know if they'll build them. He said, I can order them, I don't even know if they build them, to be honest. That's how bad the chip thing is. So, yeah, it's in everywhere. So put them in all the PS5s, I think.
Yeah, right.
To Joshua's point, the chips, it's delayed some of the control stuff. The air handling and the chiller systems have extended, but we make the stuff so we do it, once you're dealing with the manufacturer, so that's an advantage. It's not going through, 3 other hands to get it. So I don't want to make a commitment that I can't honor right now. So what I would say is we would have to come back to you with, here's the plan.
Totally.
Because that's what would be fair.
Yeah.
Then I'm not creating a false
The
expectation.
supply chain environment's a little unpredictable right now too,
Yeah.
so in 10 weeks, we might be in a totally different situation.
And that's going to be true regardless. That's not unique, that's an industry issue right now.
And on another occasion, we talked about this, and we do not want to wind up with a system or any equipment that is proprietary to not only your company, but any other. We want anyone at any time to be able to work on and service this equipment without being tied to any particular vendor, Because we've experienced that, and it's not a good business practice,
So understand? Yeah.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's appropriate under the circumstances. So we appreciate your openness to at least hear the business case that we're making.
Yeah. Well, your approach is certainly different and much more comprehensive than the way that we had started out on this and our line of thinking, and it's I can't say you're wrong about it, you know? It's,
I'd say you're thorough. I appreciate it. I like this approach.
We wouldn't feel right about giving you a quote for replacing the air handlers.
Right.
We feel that this is, like we said, a more comprehensive approach that'll end up being better for you guys in the long run.
Yeah, you're thinking holistic, like you said, about how everything works together, and right. I appreciate that. And I'm new, so I didn't know what was before, but I appreciate it, so.
Well, again, the example I use is, you know, if we're the people who are designing healthcare environments, so, you know, the surgical suite, the operating, you know, all of the technology, and, you know, that's within our skill set. And so, jails are complex. It's a very complex, and comfort and health are big issues. And I think you recognize that as well.
yeah. Okay, well, as a matter of normal way of doing business around here, we always have our county attorney review any and all agreements before we sign them. And so this, the terms of this agreement would be for the study only, right?
Yeah, essentially what that is that gets us to a proposal, if you will. I think it would answer, it would be the design, you know, it would be what you're asking for.
Yeah. So
and
an
then-
actual proposal would follow this?
Right,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay.
And it also would lay out, this lays out all that we would know all the work that you've done, so you would
Yeah.
be actually helping us to know what issues we have
And we
in
would
the
have-
work that you're gonna do, that you're
Right.
asking for us to pay you for.
And we would have
It wouldn't be
selections of
lost.
equipment and drawings. And,
Right.
you know, scope of works and the whole 9 yards.
The only thing that I would ask is that if, I don't want to have done all that work and then just be compared against someone that's just
Right.
putting equipment in. That's not, and I'd rather that you just send me on my way than because the resources and the time that we tie up to do this are far beyond the number that's contained in that letter.
Okay. Well, you wanna, well, Jeff hasn't seen
Right.
this.
Can we make a motion pending on Jeff's approval of this,
Well, we
to
can-
accept it?
Or we can table it for now until we have him look at it, and then, you know, do some more thinking on it. It's, we've got a lot to think about, a lot to consider here, Rick. I don't think this is going to be quite as simple as what we first thought.
Why don't we table it until our next meeting, give Jeff time to look at it and time for us to talk about it.
Okay. That's fine, mate.
We can talk to Joey and get his opinion also.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's,
I'll make a motion.
okay, I think that's a good idea to figure out
So
how
you're-
deep the water is before we
Right.
get into it, you know?
So you're ready to take, so we're tabling it until the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We've got, we're not keeping a real record here. We've got a motion and a second to table it to our next meeting, next regular meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, all three of us agree. Mark, let us study and stew on this for a while. We'll have our county attorney review this, and hopefully by our next meeting, we'll make a decision to go one way or the other.
Understand. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Business card.
Yeah, let me, Josh, you get a card.
And I sure do appreciate both your guys' time and effort to come down here and talk to us today, because it means a lot. It's a lot better to do business face-to-face rather than Zoom meeting or over the phone. you
Well,
know.
we like it a lot better, I'll tell you that one.
Yeah, it gets you out of town.
Sure, certainly does, yeah.
Thank you.
No, you know, I like working on this, in this space, and so it's important. And, you know, sheriffs, all the sheriff, I was just down in Indianapolis at the sheriff's convention, so, you know,
Yeah.
those guys are pretty tight, so, you know, it's, if they have good experiences, you know, they share it. And,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Well, since there's no further business, you want to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor, rise?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you all very much.